What's up everybody, it's Metamither. Today I've got an interview with Eventide CTO Russell Wedelich. If you've used the Eventide Space Pedal, the H9000, the H90, or any number of Eventide's plugins, Russell's had some hand in their creation. So let's settle in for some insight on these iconic tools. So like right off the bat, I mean, you guys just released some new granular algorithms for the H90 pedal. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Three of them are kind of based off some of the same underlying technology, and the other one's a little more, I guess, what I was calling macro granular. The three that are like granular delays are grain mod, stutter, and glitch. And they're kind of all based off the same underlying technology, but under the hood, we kind of grab the grains differently, right, and shape them differently for each algorithm to kind of give you the flavors, and kind of we curate the parameters around those names. Cosmic Web is actually based on some reverse delay work. That's the one I did a while ago now. But it's kind of a combination of some triggered reverse delay work, which I would, you can make these really long pitch shifted grains. I did it for a plugin we called Fission, and then there's a program or like an effect on the H9000 called Galaxy Borders, which has a similar kind of vibe to it. So I was inspired by those two things and figured out that this is kind of a granular alg because of the reversing of the grains and being able to trigger them with dynamics and stuff. So yeah, they're and I really like just being able to, it's an expensive pedal. So somebody spends $900, maybe $1,000 now for a black one, and we continually pump value into this platform.
I know that people love that. I mean, how could you not, right? I mean, it's incredible to just have a firmware update and then you have new stuff to play with. It's great.
Oh yeah, tell your friends.
So when you say that one of these algorithms was yours, what did you actually do for that? Is that DSP coding? Like, are you, working with lines of code? What does that all entail?
My background is signal processing, and so it is everything now for us is C++. So we're writing signal processing code in C++. We have our own sort of modular system where we can, write something called a grain delay or something called reverse, right? So it's kind of contained. And then we have our own little visual patching system that we call VSIG. It's probably similar to Max MSP. VSIG is pretty old. It started as text only, probably back in I think it was the late 80s. And that's what they used starting in a product called the DSP 4000, or maybe even the Orville. They use these SIG files, and then eventually it turned into a visual thing. So for us, for writing these algorithms, it's a combination of like you're doing your low level like stuff in C++. A lot of times you're just using stuff existing off the shelf. So you can do an entire algorithm at Eventide and not know how to code. All you need to know is VSIG, right?
I mean, that's pretty attractive to me, because then you can kind of like really get in there. But yeah, I mean, you guys have been known for like, really robust, great sounding DSP for a long time. So I love the idea that you have like this like library that you can kind of pull off the shelves and stuff, and it's already kind of tweaked to your specs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, super cool.
And that's all. I mean, the H9000. If you own an H9000, you can use VSIG for the H9000 currently.
What was your musical background getting into Eventide? What did that look like before you got to the company?
I still am, but I was a bass player. I did electrical engineering school at Texas A&M. I'm from Texas. I didn't really know how to connect that. I mean, it was obvious how to connect it to a career. You go work for Lockheed Martin or a big defense contractor. I didn't really want to make weapons, and I didn't really want to do that in a corporate environment. And I really loved playing bass. So that's what I did. So I didn't know what to do with that degree, but I knew that I loved playing bass, so I played bass. And in Texas, I did a lot of like Christian music, worship music stuff. Churches paid pretty well, and there's a church on every corner. So I did that for a couple of years, but then I started kind of getting bored, and the music is simple, frankly, and especially for a bass player. And
I imagine it's a lot of standards, right?
It's a lot of like, yeah, I guess you would call them standards at this point. Yeah, it's becoming that way, isn't it? Yeah, it's a lot of like just kind of pop things, like a lot of like, at the time, this was over 20 years ago, it was kind of like everything sounded like U2 or Coldplay or something.
Right. There was that the Clocks era. Every like piece of stock music almost sounded like that. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I liked it, but I don't know. I guess as a player, it didn't stretch me that much. And and I really missed. I realized something about myself, that I missed solving problems, and I missed engaging my intellect on something really hard. So that's when I went back to graduate school and stopped trying, and I was a professional musician for about 2 years, eked out a living.
Yeah, so connect the dots with getting to Eventide. How did that happen?
Well, I went to graduate school for music engineering tech at University of Miami. It's a great program. I was just back there this past year. They had a degree, a master's of science, for people with you had to have an electrical engineering or computer science background, right? You needed to have some chops. Some technical chops. So I got into that program, and it was a really cool multidisciplinary course like offering. We did half of our courses in the electrical engineering or computer science department. So we were doing like the advanced graduate level signal processing. There was no AI then, but there was machine learning and pattern recognition. So there was courses like that.
Yeah, most people don't realize like AI and machine learning kind of goes back actually decades. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it goes back a long, and neural nets have been around for a long time.
For
right?
sure, yeah.
It was just they didn't crack the back propagation problem until about, I don't know, a little over 10 years ago.
What is that back propagation problem?
That's how they train the nets, right? Well, it's the deep nets specifically, right? They basically have to. They'd run this thing called expectation maximization, I believe. It's just kind of brute force, like changing the weights and optimizing the structure of the network until it gives you the overall, not exactly the results you want, because you want to avoid overfitting. But it was you needed a lot of computing power to solve that, right? And it was the GPUs and the array processing that really unlocked this. It didn't really exist before. Someone cracked that. But once that happened, it's become the dominant. They do better than other machine learning techniques and pattern classification techniques. They just dominate. They have more degrees of freedom. Really, I think is what it is under the hood. Like it's just,
yeah. So you're graduating with this degree, and there was an opportunity at Eventide, I'm guessing, right?
So I went to, the Audio Engineering Society was pretty pivotal or critical. I went to an AES convention. I live just north of the city, so I'm going to point to the city that's that way. In New York City at the Javits Center. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This was 2007. I wanted a job in audio. And so Tony Aniello, who has been my boss for a while at Eventide, the whole time. I've been there 17 and a half years. But now partner, essentially. He was there on a panel for like, how do students get into this industry? And I wish I could remember the question I asked him. I remember sitting in that panel audience the whole time thinking, ask a smart question. Just ask one smart question to get to get noticed.
Yeah.
So that was, I remember that part. I don't remember the question though.
I mean, maybe looking back on it, like, knowing what you know now, maybe it wasn't the most intelligent question or something. Like, so maybe we just blocked it out or something.
Yeah, maybe so.
So you've touched like a lot of hardware as well as a lot of software, right, at Eventide. Can you break down for me a little bit, like how, what disciplines you sort of need for both things?
your foundations were important. So actually, I found that my undergraduate classes in signals and systems and discrete time math were actually really important, right? And then a lot of the stuff I took, in graduate school was really important. And the practical stuff, like I was never great at coding, frankly, and I didn't enjoy it as an activity on its own, but I've always loved math and thinking of signals and things that you can't necessarily see with your eye, but that do exist. The fact that you can chop something up both in time and in magnitude or amplitude, however you want to, and fully recover it. Like, what an amazing discovery. And that was a guy named Claude Shannon, and in like a 1930s master's thesis. That's astounding, right? Like,
yeah, it's crazy.
They knew about this stuff before they could like had the technology to do it, like, right? I would say other foundational, things for doing this knowledge-wise, not even like coding and tech. Euler's identity, right, is really important, and that's like summed up by e to the I pi, I being the imaginary number, equals -1. That tells you everything you need to know about circles and triangles, and that's really important for signal processing.
I feel like that's like imaginary numbers. Is that
it? Is imaginary numbers?
Okay.
Yeah. That one's really important.
I remember when I learned about that, like whenever in high school, and that like really cracked my brain. Like, how could this be? Like kind of thing.
It's funny. They don't know. I don't know if they teach it well. They really should teach it with trigonometry, because it's just an imaginary number is just a basis change, as in like a 90. It's just a 90 degree. It's a shorthand way of talking about an orthogonal or perpendicular relationship, something that's 90 degrees.
Yeah, I mean, like all this kind of theoretical stuff that, trig class. I never kind of connected the dots on how that relates to audio personally for me, because I don't do any programming or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like musician kind of thing. So, getting deeper under the hood with the mathematics is definitely like past my pay grade, as they say.
Well, you asked the hard question.
I did. So I brought it on myself.
Yeah, you did. But you can tell, actually, it is exciting to me. All this stuff, and then to realize it in products, right? All right. It's one thing to do it academically and write fun papers. That's cool, and that's one path that many people take, and I almost took. But to take all that foundational knowledge and then add on to it the applicable stuff of like, well, how in the world do you write a piece of software that does something that people want to give you money for, right?
Yeah.
Like, it has to be like there's one level where you can maybe convince them to take it on for free, and then there's another level where you have to convince them to give you money, and then you need to make enough money doing that to afford to do the next one, right?
Well, the step before that is like convince people to like buy the thing, like
exactly,
en masse, like
en masse,
yeah. Let's get into some of the gear. Like first, I definitely wanted to ask you about the Eventide Space. I have this pedal, and I think it's awesome. Like, a lot of the algorithms sound really, really good. It's such a Swiss Army knife as far as reverb. What was the genesis of this pedal? Did you guys kind of sit down, spitballing ideas, and you're like, we want to make like more or less the ultimate reverb pedal, or how did it all come about?
Yeah, I think so. When I started at Eventide in 2008. So, and they had just released the time factor and the mod factor when I started. I mostly worked in, Eventide actually has two divisions, or they did. One is the audio thing that and the other is a communications division, and they make public service call loggers for like 911 centers. So for the first couple of years, I mostly, probably 80% worked for communications. And why am I telling this story? It's important because the work I was doing there was learning how to write assembly code for a Motorola 56000 chip, right? That is the chip that they use in the factor pedals in Space and even H9. So they needed me to learn, because all I knew was a program called MATLAB. I wasn't even that good at C++ then. They needed me to learn how to write this. It's basically like a microchip where all the instructions are custom made for things like digital filters, right? So they had done those two things on the 56K. They had already designed the hardware, right? And I helped a little with pitch factor to learn a little bit, and then Space was the one. So the genesis of Space was like they were always going to do a reverb pedal, right? We always want to do it. Like Tony loves reverb, right? One of his most precious inventions, and really, and more so than that, like a something that was impactful in the audio industry was the SP 2016 reverb. It's such a nice lightweight algorithm that always sounds good. So they were always gonna do reverb, and then I got there, and they, I'd put in some years, and they said, hey, we want to give you this. We want you to be the main DSP engineer and sound designer on Space. And my boss at the time, Dan Gillespie, who now owns Newfangled Audio, was kind of the project manager of the pedal. So it was kind of just we have to do this. We did delay, we did modulation, we did pitch, and now we have to do reverb. And then they, Tony and a guy named Joe Waltz, who was kind of the product designer, hardware engineer kind of guy, wanted to change the look from the, to the British flag displays, to differentiate it, and this is something legit and new. So that's kind of where it came from. It's kind of a foregone conclusion. Of course, we have to do reverb. We're Eventide.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Yeah, and then the algorithms were. We had it has 10 knobs, so you had to have 10 parameters, which sometimes is too much. A lot of it was me and Dan and Joe just going back and forth, working out. They had a list of algorithms that they wanted. People had ideas. Some of it was just go look at the H8000 or the DSP 4000 or even the 3000, and find good sounds and port those sounds from the rack. They exist. Like, you have thousands of amazing sounds in these boxes that all these wonderful, talented people at Eventide had worked on over the years. Go make them work in a guitar pedal. So my main job was taking something that was for a studio engineer and coming up with a set of parameters or adjusting the existing parameters such that they made sense in a performative setting, right? You want to turn a knob and not have it feel static. It's got to be playable. So that was probably my main contribution, is creating a playable reverb.
And then from there, did you kind of develop a bunch of different algorithms, and then you realize that, oh, this one is like super, super alien, so you call it black hole, and it became this kind of otherworldly reverb that is sort of not really... It
existed. Black hole existed.
Okay.
And we never knew who actually tweaked those numbers and developed that patch. Remember I told you the SIG file? We knew that it sounded awesome, so I took black hole from... It existed in a couple of forms. It existed in a larger form on the DSP 4000. It also existed in a different form on the Eclipse.
Okay.
But I took the one from the H8000, and it had really more engineering level parameters, right? I made it fun. I added a gravity knob. I put feedback around the whole thing. I tuned the EQ such that it made sense for a player. And then boom, black hole on the pedal was born. But I actually recently met the person who tweaked the original numbers. And, oh man, I don't want to butcher his last name. He's a synth guy. Andrew, or he goes by Drew, Schlesinger. And Drew, I'm sorry if I messed up your name. But if you're listening. I think we're going to try to do a story about him, because it's such a great story. He was a sound designer, and back in the late 80s, these guys would work for all the companies. And everyone had their own version of something that you could tweak. But he's the one who actually, tweaked the numbers, the magic reverb delay line numbers in that algorithm to get that sound. He's not a coder or anything, he told me. He goes, I just know what I wanted to hear. And I'm like, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I use that one. I also have the VST plugin for that you guys make. And yeah, I use it quite a bit.
Same thing.
It's really, really special. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Dan and I, I think I came up with the parameters. There was some secret sauce that Dan added on the inside. Once I was like, this thing needs, it's kind of, some of it's just like, it doesn't even take that long. You're just like, what would a giant reverb sound like if it was gianter? And you put feedback around it and you're like, that sounds awesome.
That'll do it.
And then you move on to the next one, right? You don't know. Like,
yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Dan's work as well, like, because I use the Generate plugin quite a bit as well, and yeah, I'm super psyched to talk to him eventually about that one too, because like, honestly, like my sound is like completely indebted to that. So, like,
cool, that chaotic oscillator thing.
It's incredible, man.
Yeah,
it's such a it's just the bee's knees for me, man. Like I really almost use it on every single track I make.
Oh wow,
yeah,
that's cool.
It's like nuts. Yeah,
I'll let him know. I'll text him.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, that you should definitely do that story with Drew too, because like that just seems really curious. Like,
do you know Drew?
I don't know.
Oh yeah,
so, I mean,
he's got an Instagram account.
Got you. Yeah, so like how long does something like that take? Like it sounds like you had some of these algorithms maybe already, but how does from concept to completion, how long does a pedal like the Space take?
That wasn't the hardware platform existed already, right? So all we really were doing was tweaking the UI to give it a different display. So the only algorithm I did totally from scratch that I had to write new code for was the spring algorithm. So the spring probably took me months, but it wasn't like my one job. I would take breaks and go work on the other ones. I think all in, we finished that pedal in a year and a half, 18 months, which is fairly, I think all in, yeah. I think I maybe did spend a year on the sound design and the tweaking of the algs. I remember making like a prioritized list and setting a deadline there. Folks wanted more, and I was like, listen, if you said you want to ship on this date, I took everything you want, different people, everyone wants something, right, in a product design. Everything, I made a list. Here's everything everyone wants. And I forced people to put it in order. And this is kind of weird. I was like project managing from like the bottom, isn't it? Right? So I forced everyone to put it in order. And then I just drew a line and saying like, this is what we could ship. And I think one of the things we didn't ship that we added in an update was like reverb freezes.
Yeah.
Right? Those came maybe a couple months or a year later. We did a big update and we added freezes and some other things. So yeah, probably a year to 18 months. I think they were doing a lot of product design before. They did a lot of work conceptually in industrial design and product design before they handed it to me as an algorithm designer.
Let's switch over to the H9000. What was your role in developing that?
Mostly because at that point, because I knew 56K and I knew the module system, the H9000, the big leap there was we moved off of DSPs to ARM chips. So we went to a more modern application processor. So we needed all of Eventide's intellectual property to be rewritten in C++.
Wow.
So there was no Claude code at the time. I don't even have probably it could actually now. That would have been a great way to do it.
Are you using Claude now? Because you've mentioned it a couple times.
No, some of us are starting to mess with it, but not in any way that we're showing it source code or anything. I think it can be useful, right? And some people use it a lot, right? So I don't ignore it. That and I just now made the connection that I could have saved my had it existed years ago, it might have actually gave me a huge shortcut because I had to that was a hard job, so that was mostly what I did to help us get to the H9000. Originally the H9000 was designed around these fixed point. It's a different fixed point is a way to describe the way it handles math, like the decimals. Right? Either the decimal point's fixed or it's floating. That's the difference between fixed and float numbers. So it's just a different way, the way that it does addition and subtraction and multiplication, division. But these are fixed point processors, and all our modern stuff is floating point generally. Or
you get like more resolution with that, like basically, right?
You get more dynamic range with the floating point.
Okay.
Yeah, and I could really bore everyone, but I won't.
I'm going to cut you off.
yeah, you got to cut me off. Doing that work, it's easy when you do something like a digital filter, right? How do I know it sounds the same? Well, a digital filter is linear and it's time invariant, you know? So what does linear mean? It means that, you know, if I have two signals and I put them in X plus Y, you know, and my filter is H of X, you know, I know that if I put in X plus Y, I get out H of X plus H of Y, right? You know, I also know that I could multiply X by A and I could commute the multiplication out of the filter. And then time invariant means it doesn't really matter what, you know, I can shift the time signal and the filter's still going to do its thing. It's forever what it is. So this means that it's easy to test something like that. I can just null test, right? I have my old code in fixed point and my new code that I wrote in floating point C++, and I can record them both and invert the output of one, you know, flip the phase, multiply by -1, add them together, and if they like sum together with some really, really small number, like less than 100 dB, we're going to call it equal. Now, the hard thing is all of our like things that modulate. How do you know that sounds the same? So that was the trick, and that was the hardest part of getting to the H9000, at least from a signal processing perspective.
Got you. Is there anything that was notable particularly in the development of the pedal? Besides, I guess, like the chip thing was like the big thing, right?
That was a big one, and I, like I said, I was supposed to be writing an operating system for the DSP itself back before we moved to ARM. I actually discovered a bug in the silicon of the chip, and it took months to get who was the company at the time? I think they were called Freescale. They're called NXP now. They were obviously moving away from DSPs. Everyone was. They were moving to ARMs at the time. But I couldn't get them to... It took them like months to even acknowledge the bug. It took 1 month to convince everyone at Eventide that I wasn't missing something. And then another couple months to get them to acknowledge that there was a problem. And then that was the catalyst for us saying, you know what? This thing with DSPs is probably over, and we can't like, in good faith, keep building our hardware platforms on something that the companies are definitely moving away from. So moving to the ARM was a big one, right? So that was probably that whole thing. That was the biggest challenge, is just switching platforms in the middle of a product design, right? That's pretty tough. And I was less involved in the UI of the H9000, the rack, you know, here.
Yeah.
I'm actually running through it right now. It's my audio device. But the UI was a challenge. There was like, as challenging as it was for me to be doing the stuff under the hood, cracking the UI, there's a whole other team of people that would probably have their own, you know, trench stories. Like,
is there a new chip that comes out like every couple of years that companies update to? It's just like, you know, it's just like as technology progresses, right? You want to use better chips, right?
It's about what's available to you, mm-hmm. As a small company, and the bleeding edge stuff is either, you know, totally built and designed and owned by a company like Apple. Because the way ARM works is ARM is actually like it's a separate like company that licenses its core technology to other people, right? So anyone can,
got it,
you know, pay the ARM license, and it's a set of instructions and a way that they work together. So we typically are kind of like the fleas on the dogs eating the scraps falling off the table from huge big tech, right?
Okay.
So the dogs might be the automotive industry or something, right? Or and then us, we get what, you know, because the orders of magnitude and the difference between the parts that we order and what people order for cars or what people order for cell phones. I mean, it's just.
Right, so like you forget that we are still a kind of a niche industry, like you know, musicians in general, right? Like compared to like cars or like, you know, airplanes or something like that, right? Stuff like
so all that kind of stuff. So we're probably a couple years behind them in terms of what we can afford, because the minimum, in order to get the latest and greatest chips, you have to order like hundreds of thousands or millions of something.
Right.
Right?
That's crazy.
Otherwise, you don't even have a place in line. So.
And you were affected by the chip shortage, right? That's kind of still going on, or
Yeah, there's a new one. It has to do with memory. RAM. RAM and SSD is kind of, I don't know, it's problematic right now for many reasons. One of them obviously being data centers. Other being decisions probably by Samsung, but it's hard to keep up. But yeah, it sucks. It's it's you just have to be you just have to pivot.
Yeah. You've been obviously impacted by the tariff situation as well too, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tax, and you do what you can.
Are you sourcing a lot of stuff from China, or?
We have a partner that we work with. They're a great company called Ryder. They're like Swiss and China based, and they kind of help us find the best situation we can find.
Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of like module makers, and it's really tough for a lot of them because they're operating on even smaller scales than Eventide. So.
And if you're buying parts and trying to ship them here and assemble here, it's really unfortunate because you're going to get tariffed on every little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's we do the pedals like the H90 and everything. We manufacture those overseas, and the PCBs and stuff are usually done overseas. The H9000 we assemble and build and test here in Little Ferry, New Jersey. The big thing.
Let's talk about the H90 a little bit. So you basically had to take some of the stuff from the H9000 and put it into a pedal. I mean, there must have been challenges with that, but I'm just assuming. Like, what were the main difficulties with that one?
I guess there's probably two. The industrial design of it was a big one and fairly new to me. Now, I mentioned how on Space there was an existing platform, right? So for the H90, the nice thing was there's an existing platform, right? And there was the guy who did the H9000 is a Linux box. It's running Linux. So is the H90. This guy named Joe Bamberg, who's been working with us for a long time, is sort of our resident like embedded Linux guru. And so that made we had to actually get we jumped platforms even. Now we've made new chips for the H9000, but for a while the H90 was a little bit faster in terms of processing than even it didn't have as many cores, obviously, but just because of the available technology and the economics and what you could afford, it was it was a little faster. So we getting the Linux to work in real time on the new thing was a challenge, and then designing a pedal that can do so much but keep it small, right? Was a challenge. I drew a couple versions of the H90, and other people did too. We had lots of versions of the H90 on napkins and in docs. We made stuff like that.
It's interesting to me too how like the concept of the pedal has really evolved in the last like 10 or 15 years, where it used to literally just be like a stomp box, and now they're kind of like, computers, and like, I don't know if you'd really like take an H90 to like, like a show, like, like stomp on it. It's more like I think of it as like keep it on your desk in your studio kind of thing,
It's very stompable. I mean, we put a lot of thought into, it's cast aluminum, so it's pretty strong, and and then we test the heck out of these foot switches and even those big knobs on it. Like, we wanted to make sure that if you had to, you could step on that if you needed to. Just put a lot of thought into that. So it's pretty robust, It is both. I was thinking a lot about, because I did the concepts of the H90, right? And the H90 was an interesting project because I don't think I wrote until some algorithms came out, like not counting the algorithms I wrote previously. I don't think I wrote any code because I was the lead on H90. I think I mostly just worked with everyone and sort of drew the initial sketches, worked with an industrial designer. I don't think I wrote any code to get that product out, which is was the first one for me. It was really strange, but
nice.
you have an idea for something that should exist in reality. Now, getting all the, if you take it apart, you look on the inside, there's all these really critical tolerances, right, to get that shape and size that you want. And there's a whole part of the design, like designing it for manufacturability, right? It not only does it need to work and fit together, but it also, you need to be able to put it together in the factory in a way that isn't crazy expensive. So
right.
that was new.
Yeah, it has to like fit into a pedal board and stuff like that. It can't be outrageously huge. It has to kind of fit it within that whole ecosystem. It has to be like right next to like a Boss pedal or something. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And it still has to be usable and fun to use.
Yeah. Right.
So
yeah.
I think it's really, designing a piece of gear like this is the challenge is just it's the multidisciplinary, mostly faceted thing where you got to hold a lot of different constraints in your head, right? And it's a balancing act.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that's the dance, obviously. Yeah. Let's switch over to the plugin world. You made this plugin called Split EQ. What was your role with that one?
I handed the reins off to someone else to finish the project. It was originally when we were working on Fission. So I was me and a guy named who's now the director of signal processing at Eventide, Corey Karalik. We hired him as a PhD researcher, and he had some work for splitting tonal and transient stuff, and then we took that as a starting place and then figured out an algorithm that was a little more generalized. It could really work, and we shipped Fission. Dan, at the time, said, you really should make an EQ. Everyone needs an EQ. This would be an awesome EQ. We were like, we're an effects company. We should do it effects first. And of course he was right. And so I was like, we got to do this EQ. As soon as I put it, like we started cobbling it together, we had really ugly prototype plugins. It really hit me though. I was kind of chipping away at it in the background because I had to hear it. And it was ugly. I had like a bunch of sliders on a page. When I could hear what I could do with panning, that's when I was like, I've never heard this before. This was around 2016 or something, right? 2015. I was like, I've never heard this sound. What I could do when I could split tonal transient and then pan them individually with, pan laws. So I've just never heard this. And that's when I was like, we got to make this plugin. And so I pushed on it pretty hard. COVID messed everyone's schedule up. But it gave me time to really think, and then it gave me time to give it to the UI experts, because the other side of Split EQ has nothing to do with splitting. It's workflow, right? So I was doing some of the filter design work to get the higher order filters, and the UI guys were chipping away, and I was giving a lot of feedback on how in the world do you make this digestible and usable, right? Like this idea that there are two streams of audio and you want to do a parametric EQ. So yeah, that was kind of all happening I think we finished that in 2021 and then H90 in 2022.
And this was like an award-winning design, right? This was a super unique thing at the time.
Yeah, definitely. It was I think we just barely. Other people have like dynamics-based splits, essentially, maybe multiband, like compressor-based splits, but this isn't that. This actually doesn't really care about transients. It predicts tonal signals and then surgically extracts the tonal signal, and what's left is in the transient channel. So.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's a powerful way to think about EQ. Like EQ is one of the most simple, powerful gestures you can do to audio, and you immediately hear the difference. It's like more so than anything else. And doing it, having a specificity in not just frequency but when you EQ over time. But it's also, it's like when and where, right? Because like a dynamics processor, like a transient designer, it's going to obviously pick up and give you some sort of envelope solution for separating the initial attack from the sustain. That's what they call it, transient sustain. But it's not going to be able to identify and say, hey, transients are the initial attack and the rattles on the snare, right? Because those are such lower amp. Those are going to end up in the sustain channel.
Mm-hmm. Talk about this new Temperance plugin as well that you sent me. What's unique about this one?
Oh, this is like Eventide loving reverb. And then a lot of it's Tony's story. And he tells it pretty well in a recent tape op interview. There's this concept, and we didn't invent it, but we've significantly enhanced it and added to it, at least according to the U.S. government. We were awarded patents on top of the existing technology.
Nice.
Called modal reverb, right? And so about convolution reverb.
Yeah.
Right? You could take an impulse response of a room and it characterizes something close to that room at that point. It's like a snapshot, like a camera, right? Mm-hmm. An audio snapshot, is a good analogy. But, it always sounds like that. You can add envelopes and you can add filters before and after it, but it still is what it is, right? And parametric or the parametric reverbs and the algorithmic reverbs, I should say, have always been a little more enticing to us at Eventide because you can really get in there and mess with the sound versus convolution. And you're like, it's convolution is signals and systems, 301 in electrical engineering. To us, it's like, of course, like whatever, like that's like the whole point. Modal reverb is interesting because it takes that static response and allows you to almost like, this is convolution is something happening across time. Let's analyze that and figure out what set of filters laid out across frequency can give us that same response, right? So we have a machine learning style algorithm that does that. And learns a real space or an algorithmic space. And even now we experiment with there's synthetic spaces that we've designed completely in the modal domain. So if you can do this, Temperance for us was like, oh man, we should. Tony's was just, there was a story he had about a violin maker that, the guy was like, the notes are in the wood. And then Tony, like years ago, was thinking the notes are in the room. Like that's what he heard. So if you have a parallel set of filters, thousands of them, that, when you send a signal into each of them, they all sum up and sound like this room. What's to prevent you from saying, hey, you know what? I know the center frequency of each of those filters. Let me find the ones that correspond to notes on the Western scale. And let's just either emphasize or de-emphasize based on that. What would that room sound like if the notes are in the room? We know they're in there. Like, how do we... That was kind of the idea. And that's where Temperance came from. And we have a blog post about it that's a pretty good, couple of them actually, 2 or 3 now that are pretty, describe it fairly well. But yeah, that's the inspiration, is it's just the combined love of reverb and harmonizing. It's kind of up to the tool maker or the tool wielders now. Like, we made the tool and we think that there's some cool musical stuff in it, but we're always surprised when artists get their hands on these things and you're just like, oh, I never thought of that. That's
always got to be the joy, right? That's got to happen every single time. So it's cool.
Pretty much. Yeah. I remember back on Space when we would get presets back from you get Richard Devine was always the one. It's to this day. He's the one that surprises you. You're like, I didn't know it could do that. It's like all 10 of his presets.
Yeah, he's such a giant in our world too, like with modular and stuff like that. Like he's always got presets for it seems like everything, and he always just takes the gear to its maximum potential for sure. Yeah, definitely.
At least from my perspective, like he's been that way for decades. And it's pretty astounding.
Yeah, I mean, I remember listening to him in the 90s, and he's still kind of like going strong with all that stuff. It was so alien to me even then, but like, it's now I'm finally doing the modular thing, and it's like, I'm touching a little bit of like what he has in his studio, but
yeah,
I'll never get there.
I've heard Frank Zappa was like this too. It was like within a minute or two could find sort of the true soul of a piece of gear artistically. Like he would just go right there, and it was like, that is probably the best sound that anyone's ever going to get out of this gear. Like, and boom, right there. So
that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Shifting away from plugins, where do you see your company heading as far as hardware and software? Do you have any projects on the horizon, or do you have a kind of direction that you're heading in?
I'm still excited myself about the players and the full embodied experience of music, whether you're playing an instrument or twisting knobs or having to like hook things up to try to get new sounds like you guys do in modular. Personally, I'm inspired by like synthesis as well. Like I got Santa brought me this OPXY for Christmas, so that was my Christmas break. Was like we had a kind of quiet break, so I was here at home learning. I like sequencing a lot, and I like sampling is fun too, So I don't know. I think it's the community. The communities inspire me. The people actually. And I'm not even like anti-AI. There's a lot of fear around stuff, and Suno claims to be making a lot of money and be really successful. It's impossible to know.
Mm-hmm.
I'll share a piece of wisdom that Dan shared with me a couple of years ago, and it stuck with me. He told me that he said that he goes, I think fear and creativity are opposites. He goes, it's almost impossible to be creative when you're afraid. And that's really stuck with me when I think about some of this AI stuff, and what it means for us as musicians is.
Creatively, there's this myth of like the tortured artist, but I feel like it's such a wrong way to think about it. I think that, if you're like going through something really difficult, it's really hard to make a great piece of music. I think like the people always think like the opposite is true, where you have to be like struggling or depressed or, something like this. But I don't know. It just,
I think friction matters, but it doesn't necessarily have to be negative, right?
Right.
Like, it's
like creative constraints, let's say.
Yeah. And you do like, it's work to make something of value. But you don't, but a lot of times it's like, you don't know that it's work. It's like you could 4 hours go by and you're like, wow, how was that 4 hours?
Yeah, for sure.
I was
Well, Russell, thanks you so much for taking the time today, man. This has been an awesome conversation. And,
thank you.
Yeah, look forward to what Eventide has coming out for sure in the years and months ahead.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be a pleasant surprise.
All right, that was the interview with Russell. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your suggestions for future guests in the comments, and remember to subscribe so you never miss a video. See you next time.